All right, so we'll continue on. In the next verses 13 through 18, we're going to see Pharisees and Herodians asking about taxes. So this is 13 through 17. Then they sent some of the Pharisees and Herodians to him in order to trap him in a statement. They came and said to him, "Teacher, we know that you are truthful and do not care what anyone thinks. For you are not partial to anyone, but you teach the way of God in truth. Is it permissible to pay a poll tax to Caesar or not? Are we to pay or not pay?" But he, knowing their hypocrisy, said to them, "Why are you testing me? Bring me a denarius and look at. And they brought one. And he said to them, "Whose image and inscription is this?" And they said to him, "Caesar's." And Jesus said to them, "Pay to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's." And they were utterly amazed at him. Okay, so the first thing that I notice here too is, and we mentioned this before, this happened once before, the Pharisees and the Herodians are working together.
Yeah.
Right? And so you've got a religious faction and a political faction that maybe don't see eye to eye.
Don't normally work together. Yeah.
But they are kind of the enemy of my enemy is my friend in this. And so the fact that the Herodians were political and that they were in support of Roman rule kind of showcases the type of question, right? This is something they thought they could really get him on. Well, let's ask him a question about the legitimate governancy.
Yeah, we're not going to ask him about God because every time they ask him about God, every time they ask him about the Savior and the Messiah, he kind of gets it right. But let's try this. This is something we haven't tried before.
Yes. You know what? This is something that reminds me of common days, too, is when we start talking about Jesus, people start asking us our political affiliations.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And as if that's going to be a gauge on any of that. But it's a way to try to trap people and label them in a specific way. Mm-hmm. And what we see later, as we were talking about, they're looking for charges to bring against Jesus.
Right.
Right. Later, they falsely accused Jesus of saying that you don't have to pay your taxes. Mm-hmm. Right. So, and we'll see that pop up here later in the text. But something that's also interesting about this is they start by kind of flattering him, and they frame their questions with statements about his character. Right. So like, teacher, you're truthful. Mm-hmm. You don't have regard for what people think. You only have regard for the truth, right? Yeah. It's like, let's butter him up a little bit and kind of see if we can play to his ego. Yeah. Which, newsflash, Jesus isn't proud. Right. Yeah. So, but he immediately kind of sees through this and sees that they are being hypocritical.
Yeah, and it's a very short, obviously, passage here, but I think that taking aside obviously that this is Jesus saying it, and this is obviously in the Holy Week, but this just shows the importance that we are still to be good citizens as followers of Christ. We still have a duty to our government, to our leaders, and obviously Paul talks about that, in some of his letters that says, be submit to the leaders, whether you like them or not. Now, obviously, if they tell you to do something that would be sinful, don't do that. But and even Paul later on, and I guess it was in Acts, they arrested Paul and they were going to try him. He says, "Wait a minute, I'm a Roman citizen. I have rights there." And they're like, "Oh, crap. Okay, well, so." It just reminded that even Jesus said and did submit to his authorities. I mean, even though he was the ultimate authority on earth because he was fully man, he said, you are still to do this and you're still to, be rightful citizens.
Right. And the catch that they're trying to get him into there is if he says that you... Because if he says you don't have to pay taxes, he's against Rome. Right. But if he says you do have to pay taxes, he's denying God's sovereignty over Israel in their views, right?
Right.
So this is the Pharisee side of it, right?
Right. And that's why it's so brilliant what he says. He says, "All right, give me a coin." He's like, "Whose picture is this?" Well, this is his anyway, so just give it back to him.
God expects you to be, truthful in the face of both man's authority and God's authority, right?
Right.
And And you were, as you were kind of talking through that and discussing that when we talk about the idea of being subject to earthly authorities, right? I think there's a unique distinction that I'd like to make on that, because as we talk about that, it's something that has occurred to me lately, and I don't know if maybe I'm just late to the party, maybe everybody else has already thought this way, but like I think sometimes when we hear that, and I think sometimes when non-believers like weaponize that, what they're saying is you have to agree with whatever the government's asking you to do, right, and in reality, it's not that. It's that you have to accept their judgment. Right. So I think take Daniel, for example.
Yeah.
Daniel did not start a revolution, but he did not fight the fact that he needed to be thrown into the lion's den.
Right.
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did not bend their knee, but they didn't fight the fact that the penalty for that was death.
Right.
You accept the consequence, the earthly consequence, for obeying the heavenly. So you're submitting to that judgment and to that rule.
Yeah.
And I think that's, for me, that has helped me work through some of that. It's like, it's not a matter of, and that's not to say you shouldn't be politically active, that we shouldn't vote with our morality, that we shouldn't vote with, things of God in mind or any of that. But, when things don't go the way we would hope they would go, or we end up with leaders that we don't maybe respect or that have different views or values than us and that want us to follow their values, we can accept their rule without accepting their premise.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point that I've never really heard or thought of. But no, that's a great point. And yeah, you're right. We are called to live as Jesus lived and submit to our authorities. And because the thing that we have to remember is, at the end of the day, God rules it all anyway. And God can use God. I mean, they threw Paul and, was it Barnabas, I guess? They threw Paul and Barnabas in jail, and they converted the guard.
Yeah.
So if you obviously vote your conscience, or you decide that whatever, and you're punished for that, God will use your earthly punishment for his heavenly good.
Right. Exactly.